Now that Brian Kohberger is back in Idaho, his arrest affidavit has been released, and a lot of the questions we had have been answered, although still a lot remain unanswered. Let's talk a little bit about a major storyline that has not even really started to unfold yet. And that is Brian Kohberger's defense. And make no mistake about it, Kohberger is not going to plead guilty in these murders. Kohberger's public defender from back in Pennsylvania, Jason LaBar, stated that Kohberger would not be able to afford an attorney once returning to Idaho, therefore he would be appointed a public defender. And she is already hard at work. Her name is Ann Taylor, and yes, she has already been to the crime scene, as you can see in these photos. Kohberger's public defense attorney back in Pennsylvania, Jason LaBar, has already told us that Kohberger said he expects to be exonerated, and also Kohberger's family says they believe he is innocent. So the question is, what is Brian's defense going to be? The evidence against him that we have recently learned is pretty damning. However, it is all circumstantial. And before you guys slaughter me in the comments, yes, I do believe Kohberger is most likely the guy. However, after listening to several defense analysts, this may not be a slam dunk case like it sounds like. So here's some of the holes that a defense attorney could possibly poke into the prosecution's case. For starters, the FBI was looking for a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra, and they only changed that to a 2015 model once they found out what Brian Kohberger was driving. Secondly, although Kohberger's cell phone had pinged off towers near the crime scene in the weeks leading up to the murders, during the murders, Kohberger's phone did not ping near the residence. And you may say, yeah, he turned it off or left it behind when he went to commit the murders. But with his educational background, would he not also know to do that while stalking the victims? One may think so. And also, according to people way smarter than I am on these things, where a cell phone pings is anything but solid evidence. And a cell phone could ping hours away from where someone actually is. Thirdly, the sheath that was left behind at the crime scene allegedly had one strand of Kohberger's DNA on it. Since they have not found the murder weapon, a defense attorney could easily say that Brian had that stolen off of him at some point. And let's remember, the defense team only needs to plant one seed of doubt into one of the jurors, and Kohberger walks free.
Here's where we are in present day with the JonBenét Ramsey case. There was a small sample of DNA found in the child's underwear, but it didn't come up with any matches in the system, which typically means that whoever it belongs to has never been arrested. But John Ramsey has been making major pushes to test the DNA using new methods. We all know that the police basically botched the crime scene, and John wants major reform. The Boulder police have been reluctant to test the DNA because it's such a small sample that you could literally use up all of it through testing. But modern DNA testing involves running the sample through the police's database as well as private DNA companies. This includes comparing the DNA sample from the crime scene to people's DNA that they've submitted to private companies like 23andMe. If the killer's family member, and this can be like once, twice, 3 times removed, has ever used this service, then the police can actually narrow down who it was. And it's actually how they caught the Golden State Killer. The Ramseys were exonerated for the crime in 2008 after Patsy passed away from cancer. And law enforcement does believe that an intruder killed JonBenét. And also, if the family did it, then how would they do that without leaving any DNA on her body? But again, it even confuses me that, wouldn't the family's DNA already be on her because, they all live in the same house? The Boulder Police Department has already switched out the lead detective on this case because in 2022, they found that the person who was in charge wasn't using all the available resources. There's also a petition you can sign to release the DNA and expand the investigation.
When Kohberger exits the van with his escorts, he swiftly looks over in the direction of the reporters. And that's the look right there, you guys. You're probably feeling the same as many of us are feeling, sick to our stomach, the anger, the rage that instantly fills seeing this suspect for the first time in public view. For the first time, we're able to see his stature. Look at him amongst the other officers escorting him. He's tall. He's not just tall and lanky, but he is tall in stature. We're able to see that he has a bulletproof vest on. This is not uncommon for someone in this type of case. With the amount of eyes on this case, what this case is about, this is not uncommon at all. We want to get him from point A to point B, which is that courtroom, so that he can answer to these criminal charges that are being held against him. Remind you, he is being held for first-degree murder on 4 accounts.
How are you feeling?
So the Idaho affidavit's been released. I posted it to my Twitter if you want to read it. All of my links are at killerbtactical.org. At the scene, they collected a knife sheath to a K-bar knife. They got DNA off the snap. It was laying on the bed next to one of the victims. Probably the first victim, but not the intended target. Another reason why I think he got his target and left. One of the surviving roommates sees the suspect walking down the hall and passes her. She froze. She said he was about 6'1" and had an athletic build, but not muscular. He was wearing a ski mask, but he had big bushy eyebrows. The witness says the suspect was clad all in black. They got a shoe imprint that are consistent with Vans. Skater shoes, if you don't know. They then use cameras to basically track the car all the way back to Pullman. They're able to get a plate. The plate comes back to the suspect, and the suspect's been stopped in that car several times, showing that it's his. It also looked like he was renewing his tags from the state of Pennsylvania to Washington. The officers wanted to know if he was stalking his victim, so they've pulled phone records showing his location. Basically, if your phone's on, every few seconds it contacts the nearest tower and says, "Are you here? Yes, I am." It shows he's been very close to that area several times. The night of the homicide, his phone goes dark for several hours during the homicide. Then it comes back on. Agents in Pennsylvania do a trash pull at the parents' house. Trash is abandoned property, you don't need a warrant. They get a DNA sample from the dad. They get a sample that's this much of a match to the DNA that was found on the sheath. Keeping in mind, officers put the bare bones on affidavits. There's going to be so much more evidence. From digital evidence to forensic, fiber evidence, DNA, social media. There's going to be a lot, especially if they had this much just starting out. So why didn't the roommate that saw the bad guy call the police sooner? I'm wearing my detective's hat as well as my dad hat on this one. The affidavit says she sees him, but it stops there. 21 years old, she's just a kid. I'm guessing, but likely comes from a small town and hasn't seen a whole lot. I don't know her history or any trauma she's suffered. Any blame you lay on her is not going to bring those kids back. Both roommates that survived have been scrutinized as being suspects. And they did the right thing. They survived. Maybe her phone wasn't in her room. Maybe the suspect threatened her. Maybe she fainted and knocked herself out. Scrutiny like this high-profile case brings will be hard for anybody to endure, but especially on a kid. The important thing is she's a witness, and she's alive, and she's safe. Please don't participate in any hateful behavior on her, because both roommates been put through enough.
So I have kind of two thoughts on that. I think, and not to be graphic, I do think that, when you stab 4 people, that takes a lot of energy and a lot of exertion. And I do think part of it was that he was tired, quite frankly. I personally, based on the evidence that was released in this probable cause affidavit, I'm not certain that he planned on killing all 4 of them or expected all 4 of them to be there. And so I think that he may have been in such a daze and such a state that he just walked right by that roommate and didn't necessarily see her, although she said that she saw him. Now, if she was in a state of shock can take hours, days, weeks sometimes to wear off. And so that very well may have been the case with her. I know a lot of folks are sort of upset with her for not calling the police, but it's really hard to put yourself in a situation like that. And I'm not sure that at the top of her mind, she had thought that, 4 of her roommates had been murdered. My other